once I got the opportunity with Dobbs to promote young talent in Philadelphia. And it all began in 1972. I was going to college and dedicated myself to my schooling until I graduated, and then went downtown. I went into a bar once. The next time I went in, people actually introduced themselves to me, and I gained so many friends that I never thought I would. Right now I live in Hawaii, and I could sit across the bar from someone for 2 years without an introduction. But that's what amazed me about Philadelphia. And the reason I stayed in Philadelphia was I just happened to fall into a job in a bar called J.C. Dobbs that an ex-policeman bought, Joe Garrison, and Al Cohen, who was quite a gangster. He owned the Cave on Market Street, which was the Cave, the real Cave. And the first manager they hired was someone was robbing parking meters in Philadelphia for months. He had the key. His name was Crazy Eddie. And they caught him one day, and he couldn't run because his pockets were filled with quarters. He had a trench coat on. Every time he started to run, his pockets would sway, and he'd keep falling down. And they caught him. Ironically enough, he ended up managing Dobbs. Then he brought in Walter Easley and had a heart attack. And Joe Garrison was in the hospital for quite a while. And I was hired at that time to help renovate the bar and take care of the bar duties. And he got out of the hospital and there was no money. So he wanted to know who took the money. So we all took lie detector tests. And the next thing I know, Joe says, "You passed. Would you like to be my partner?" So for the next 7 years, I dedicated myself to build a local talent venue. And it became, to me, like Little League used to be. When my parents would come to see the Little League games, these parents came to see their children play rock and roll. And I started auditions on a Monday night, made sure they played original music somewhat, and worked on the bar and continued to work on it. And turned out we'd have 100 different bands a year play. I was there 10 years. Well, the true story is I would still be there today if it hadn't been for the partnerships that I took on. I would be pushed out by the majority rule, so I had to leave. I was in self-imposed exile in Hawaii for 20 years. It took me a long time to get over it because we started subgroups that were famous by that time. My bartender, Tony Bidgood, took the Stray Cats to England. And they didn't know that they couldn't plug in their instruments and play in England because the electrical systems were different. I remember sitting in Tony's house one day, and Brian calls up, Brian Setzer, and he said, "Tony, my motorcycle's leaking oil, and my landlord's really upset. What do I do?" Tony says, "Put a pan under it." So these kids were so naive and young and famous. They ended up living in the Rolling Stone studios the second week they got there. They get off the airplane and they're tattooed and they're beautiful, and people followed them as rock stars. And they became that in a month. George Thorogood was another one who actually lived at my house when they played. And George came into my house one day and he said, "Where's my bedroom?" I said, "George, I only have 2 bedrooms, and the other 2 band members, I've already taken them." George says, "I'll take the kitchen." So he hangs up his monogram towels and he lives in my kitchen on the weekends, on the floor, on a futon. There's a funny story is, about 2 years later, he calls me back and he says, "Do you have my monogram towels? I want them back." So I sent his monogram towels back, but I still had his ankle weights that he wore constantly every day before he played so he could kick hard in the air. But there were so many other stories, so many other stories.